Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and welcome to In the Headlines, where we will shortly be discussing the central papers of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, namely the al-Hakam newspaper and the al-Fazl paper. And we will also be having an insight into this week's news with MTA News. I'm joined with here Farooq Rahil Saab, who is the assistant editor of al-Fazl, and Taleh Ahmed Saab, who is a journalist for MTA News. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thank you very much for coming down today. We're going to be starting off, of course, with the al-Hakam paper. Today, you look at the very front page and it screams Brexit in your face. And this is exactly what it's talking about. It mentions about, it takes you right back to 2 years ago when we had the referendum, talking about the divide which was created in British society and the fact that it's even prevalent today and that people have not actually been able to make a decision. It's very uncertain as to what the decision will be. Even recently, we just had a vote of no confidence, which was overturned. I mean, there's a lot of things going on right now at the moment. So I think it's quite timely that this article regarding Brexit has been published in al-Hakam.
Absolutely. I think there's quite an interesting quote at the end. They basically question or present the idea that perhaps in his speeches over the years, Hazrat Amir al-Mu'mineen, may Allah be his helper, has presented in advance the solution to the crisis that we're seeing in this day and age of not just in Brexit, but in nationalism and in divides, not just in this country, but around the world. And the quote they've referred to is one of many quotes they could have chosen because he's spoken on this issue many, many times. And that is that we need to reform our relationship with Allah the Almighty. His law is the perfect law, not the law of mankind. And that will be the means of finding a way towards peace in the world.
I mean, that's very interesting. We also have a featured piece in al-Hakam, which I find personally very intriguing, this week in history, Farooq Saab. And it talks about exactly what happened in the Ahmadiyya Muslim community on the 18th, 19th, 20th of January, which are basically today and the days after. So what's happened in the history?
So that's right. It's very important events happening in this week. So just briefly, I want to mention that the promised Messiah, he began his journey back from Jhelum, where he had the case of Karamdin, very important and very historic event is that. And then we have also that on this day, on 18th of January 1970, Hazrat Hafiz Mirza Nasir Ahmad, Khalifatul Masih, he laid the foundation of the Khilafat Library. Okay. But details is, of course, for the reader.
Of course, you can always check it online at al-Hakam.org. Of course, that was al-Hakam. We're going to move on now swiftly to al-Fazl, and it's quite an honor that you yourself are working for al-Fazl, serving there. I mean, tell us a little bit about it. This is the first time we've had someone from al-Fazl here with us. What kinds of things do you feature on it? Just tell us a little bit about al-Fazl itself.
So, alhamdulillah, al-Fazl International covers in detail the activities of Hazrat Khalifatul Masih. It's a newspaper, a weekly newspaper in Urdu. And we also cover various articles on various topics and, of course, reports about Jamaati events happening in around the world. And, of course, in every paper, we present the recent Friday's sermon in Urdu, the official transcript of the latest Friday's sermon of Hazrat.
There's also here mention of a National Amla meeting, the National Amla of Switzerland, rather, yes. Were able to meet His Holiness Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, Ayyadahullahu bi Nasrihi al-Aziz. It's mentioned here, a lot of good, we can have a lot of advice we can learn from here. What kinds of things are mentioned here? Yeah,
coming to the front page in this week's issue, we have a detailed report about mulaqat of Khuddam from Switzerland who had mulaqat with Hazur, and Hazur Anwar Ayyadahullah bi Nasrihi al-Aziz gave very precious pieces of advice to the Amla members about how they should work in their respected departments. Our regular feature is, of course, on the front page as well, where we cover activities during the week of Hazrat Khalifatul Masih the 5th. Right. And moving on, we have, of course, articles and reports as well. On the second page, we have a detailed report about Hazur's tour of Guatemala, and in this week's issue, it also talks about where Hazur comes back to Houston from Guatemala.
It's very interesting. You mentioned about the activities of His Holiness, and Taleh in MTA News as well. Recently, you started a feature this week with Hazur, and I think that's really, really interesting. Bit of an exclusive insight. What's going on this week with Hazur's activities?
Well, I think we should first mention, I think when this comes out, people still have the opportunity to watch the current episode, which is available on our YouTube and official social media accounts. And of course, last week was very interesting. Hazur, we only show a glimpse. We can't show Hazur's full schedule. We don't have the resources to cover that. But the incredible thing was last week he met with the two Lajna groups, and both of them had the opportunity, various amlas, a regional amla from Germany and a national amla from here in the UK. They had opportunities to ask questions, and one question which does, from judging from the reaction on social media, seem to have struck a chord with the MDs around the world is that a lady asked, when will Hazur, does he foresee himself returning to Pakistan imminently? And Hazur's answer was somewhat bittersweet in that he replied that these sort of things, if we look at the Quran and study the Quran, we learn that these sort of things actually happen quite suddenly. It's all part of Allah the Almighty's plan, but we don't know exactly when it's going to happen. And it did seem like a bittersweet note, and it brought home that sadness that neither are the MDs in Pakistan able to enjoy Hazur's directly visiting them there, and neither is Hazrat Khalifatul Masih, who is of course born in Pakistan and raised there, able to return to his homeland. So it was quite a bittersweet and emotional moment.
And much more as well to come, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Unfortunately, that's all we have time for. Brexit, you've got advice for Khuddam al-Ahmadiyya in Switzerland, and so many activities of His Holiness, may Allah be his helper. You can catch up online with all these papers on al-Hakam.org for al-Hakam. For al-Fazl, it's al-Fazl.org. And with MTA News, of course, you can watch it on Sky Channel 708 or catch up on YouTube on MTA Online 1 or MTA News. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.